how to find your way around the Filecoinverse. And it has two branching paths. So I want people to put their hands up if you're sort of new, right? If you imagine, like, there are some people here who have the 1,000-yard stare that indicates they're not entirely new. But is there anybody who is super new? Like, Reba, okay. Unless you had a mind wipe. Look, you're all sort of going, yeah, I'm new, but I think what that implies, I think what that implies, don't worry, the rhetorical answer you were supposed to give is no, we're all old, because that makes me feel a little bit better. When I saw this title, I did realize, oh God, this is going to sound like an introductory thing, and I think Molly was kind of like, hey, if you don't know your way around the Filecoiniverse, come to Danny's talk. And I was thinking, oh, it's not really going to be like that. And also, if you don't know your way around the Filecoiniverse, but you've somehow managed to make your way to Buenos Aires, I think you're doing pretty good already. This is actually in the true tradition of Filecoin Developer Summit talks. This will be a talk where I will describe a problem and say, hey, let's have an interactive discussion afterwards where we kind of solve this problem. And then I will talk for so long that we will run out of time, and then we will have the same talk at the next Filecoin Developers Summit, and we will do this again. This talk actually comes from about 230 years ago in a Lab Week 23. Does anybody remember that? Is anyone that old? No, I didn't think so. Right? It's not even, right, MPG, that's how old you are. You're 2 years old, right? Okay, so that's like 200 years in Filecoin time. And we had a little talk there about communication, and this is where the meme came up that I'm going to kind of jump around a bit. That the Filecoiniverse is an oral culture. How many people have been cornered by me in a 3 o'clock in the morning drunken conversation where you've heard that being said? Okay, so I've been noodling on this, and what it means is basically a lot of the conversations, a lot of the documentation, a lot of the implicit knowledge of us as of various ecosystems happens in rooms like this. And it happens in Zoom calls and things like that. But nothing, and for those of some of my best friends are order Muppets. The world is divided into Chaos Muppets and order Muppets. You'll be surprised to find I'm a Chaos Muppet. But the order Muppets are like, why isn't anything written down? Why don't you write documentation? And we're like, don't worry, the AI will fix that. And it's been 2 years, and we're getting better, right? So what you'll notice is that we still haven't quite solved this problem, right? So this is the diagram. Now, admittedly, I took this screenshot of the notes for my talk before I gave you this talk. So this is my way of getting a note taker to come in. And if you notice, the only notes on there is 10 Phil to whoever starts writing these notes. So if anybody, you see the incentives work, ladies and gentlemen, right? Like and this means that will be an on-chain payment. So we've already reached some of our KPIs here, right? Well, okay. Time to Reba heckling this talk. 5 minutes, that's what I thought. So last, the virtual FDS, no, actually it was in Berlin 150 years ago, or 2 months in real figures. I excitedly talked about CommTools SIG, MPG and John were very excited. They joined the chat, and I gave a long rule saying like, well, you know, this is how we should talk in this, and then I never said anything again. And John said, this is fascinating because you're doing this CommTools SIG, but you don't appear to be writing anything down. And I was like, John, you've got to the heart of the problem here. So after 3 months of research in the CommTools SIG, this is the executive summary of the conclusions of the research project. Number one, writing is hard, it turns out. It's hard because you people have lives. Well, I mean, you people have jobs. Your jobs aren't necessarily writing. I mean, they kind of are, and you sort of, when you wake up in the morning, you have a great aspiration to write, and it's definitely something that you would like to do. But it's not something that is particularly easy to integrate into what you're doing because you're trying to ship stuff. And of course, this in a developer environment is a classic thing. Who has time to write documentation? But there was another really interesting conclusion I came out of this research project, which is reading is also hard. This is an experiment I did for stack leads. Who here is in stack leads? Who here has heard of stack leads? There's a sort of mysterious, terrifying thing that you're not allowed into. I was going to show a document here of the stack leads thing, but basically one of the secrets I can reveal before I'm assassinated by the Illuminati is that at the beginning of stack leads, we have a huge amount of statistics that David Gasquez just pulls out of his head. Then we have reports in from all the different, that's the Illuminati getting closer to me. We have all these reports that come in, and we spend the first part of stack leads reading through the whole thing, so that we have this big understanding of the ecosystem and we can deal with any hot points. For the last 3 months, I've been hiding treasure in the stack leads thing. So in various points and in various links off stack leads, I, in the same way as the note-taking thing, have been putting these documents and links in. And if you put your address in, you will get a treasure hunt piece. I haven't been entirely fair about this, and I will note that sometimes people do come in and go, haha, I saw this. But they don't give their wallet address, so I can't give you people any money. But one of the things I think this indicated in a completely unscientific way, I think the easiest conclusion here is what is the most prominent document that we've produced for public consumption in the last few years? What is it called? It's called TLDR, right? And I think that's one of the problems, right? Even if we wrote more, even if we talked to each other more in a documented way like this, the bandwidth overrides what we're doing, right? But there's another issue here, right? Which is I talked here about how stack leads is where we talk about some of the important and compelling things that go on. And there's a lot of really useful information in stack leads. And actually, we want to get that out, right? We want to broadcast that out. One of the things that I was really interested in exploring here is this note-taking process is partly to export information to a wider ecosystem. And in fact, Big Lep, who is practically the god of information collating. If you ever want any hints or tips about how to do this, Big Lep is amazing. And also Sarah, who is one of the best sort of explainers to the outside world and the internal world of what's going on, got together to try and create a document that would come out of stack leads. And it was a real struggle because part of the thing is that when you send a document out into the world, you inevitably strip it from context, right? And one of the things that people are most worried about in an extremely high context, high information world like this is, oh my God, what if you know, what if it gets into the wrong hands, but what if this is interpreted incorrectly, right? It's an act of bravery to write something down, right? Because you're not only trying to clarify it to yourself, you're trying to explain this to a whole wide range of very diverse ecosystem members. And even if it's a very simple bit of information, that makes it extremely hard to be brave enough to propagate it out. Let me give you a good example here, right? So when I go, oh yeah, we should get more information out, what's the number one thing do you think people shout out and tell me what people want, information that they want? You can shout out at this point. You'll never get it, unless you're the person who shouted it out. I like it. Shout out, but shout quietly for the transcriber as well. Flo, what?
No, I'm just here to mic run.
I'm not an actual speaker. MPG. What do you think people want to know? Roadmap's pretty good. Roadmap's good.
Documentation.
Documentation in general. That's definitely a begging.
DRIs.
Yeah. And I know Protocol Labs has this, and I've just started to use it, so maybe I'm talking unfairly, but I really would love to know, like, who is on what team, where they sit, what they oversee, who's the decision maker for that team, and what their roles are.
So happy. I'm so happy you didn't plan it. Org charts.
But I do know Protocol Labs has
It's fine.
directory.
You don't have to apologize.
And I just updated
okay.
my...
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Meredith's...
You're all right. You're in safe space now. You don't have to go. I know it's no one's fault. It is no one's fault. And I'm about to explain why it's no one's fault. It's org charts. Right, that's what this diagram... This is basically our org chart, by the way. That's magic. So Molly said this like in Berlin, right? You said org chart, right? Like, I would love to see an org chart. Who here have I told at 3 o'clock in the morning while I'm drinking heavily about Project Karen? Do you know Project Karen? Okay. AI, this is not for wider consumption. So an external ecosystem partner at some point, and the point of this story, again, is not to allocate blame or anything like this. The point of this story is to show that this is something that we have as a cultural thing that isn't just about nucleation. Because I think one of the things people think about is, oh, this is nucleation's fault, which is good, right? Because it's like the Wicker Man, right? If there's something wrong with our ecosystem, you can either blame someone else or you can blame nucleation. And like, nucleation's probably a safer thing to blame. But in the days before nucleation, Project Karen was something that an ecosystem partner did, where whenever they talked to an individual member of the wider sort of Protocol Labs universe, they would ask for the name of their manager. And it wasn't a Karen thing. It wasn't like, I want to see your manager. They were reverse engineering the org chart because that was the only way they could map out whatever. So there were bootleg org charts going around the ecosystem going, I think that this is what is going on. And I thought, okay, well, this is obviously, you know, this is a fixable problem, right? I can do this in the first 2 days of my research project. Okay, so one of the things I found about org charts, and this will be confirmed, in the real world, out there, where we assume everything is done properly, right? We're obviously just, you know, jamming around and trying to make this up as we go along. But out there, presumably, in Amazon or somewhere, there are grown-ups, right, who do this and have done this for 1 million years and know how to do it, right? So they must have a way of conveying these org charts and things like that. I had long conversations with people going, what do you do when you want to export your org charts? And they went, oh no, that's proprietary information. And I went, well, what do you mean? I mean, surely companies share their org charts and go, no, absolutely not, right? Like, we don't. And I went round and I went, yeah, this is actually true. People don't share their org charts. This is actually a security issue because people say, okay, we cannot share our org chart because phishers will be able to, like, do something, maybe we'll call it Project Karen, and reverse engineer our network and use that for phishing. So actually, companies are very protective about their org charts, and that same kind of bump of like, this is something that we say in an organizational context, in an institutional context, is something that we're slightly uncomfortable about pushing out. And anybody who's built any tool knows a little bump like that is going to have an effect. And we feel this particularly finely, right? Because our abstraction isn't over organizations, right? Our abstraction is over human beings. And let me give you an example here. So, okay, that's David. Everybody kind of cheered when I mentioned David. David has all the numbers. Everyone, David. Okay. Who knows where David works? Yes, okay. The people, but does it matter? Probably not, right? Okay, Reba's like, okay, I'll get to you later, Reba. Okay, who else is around that I carefully wrote up? Okay, magic. Where does magic work?
Giving a session.
Right, so I just point out, it's probably Curio, right? But magic also goes back to that previous org diagram, works in a lot of other spaces, right? Now, these are particularly hard versions of this question, right? Like if I'd said Hannah Howard, right? People would go, oh yeah, Sriracha, right? And so but that's kind of interesting too, because it's almost a one-to-one mapping between Sriracha and Hannah, right? Like if you were to ask you, okay, who should you go to if you wanted to find out what Sriracha was going on, you'd probably say Hannah, right? Hannah's the CEO, right? Like in most situations, you wouldn't necessarily do that, but we do, right? Our abstraction is over individuals. Like rather than import like this, we talk to individuals. And more, also, those individuals do not, and clusters of individuals do not exactly align with organizational barriers. And I feel like in some ways I'm kind of telling you all things that you already know, but I want to try and convey how weird that is. It's not like crazy weird. There are many other sort of environments where that is true. It's certainly true in people's social lives. The other example I'd use is browsers, actually. So the people who build browsers are sort of like itinerant Zen monks, right? Like samurai maybe. They wander from like Google to Apple to Mozilla and then back in like a 7-year circle, right? And they just go, oh, I'm bored of the food in this cafeteria. I think I'll go and work for Firefox. And they walk the 2 blocks down to Firefox where the food is already paid for by Google. But anyway, the important thing here is that where they are is less important than who they are and what that knowledge is. And this, again, I just want to reassure people, this is fine, right? This is a perfectly normal thing. But one of the challenges is the tooling is not built for that, right? One of the things we struggle with let's take the stack leads thing, is like, what is the perimeter of stack leads? Who do we share? What are the intersections between these things? So the conclusion I have, like I wanted to say at the beginning, this is not going to be the same talk, right? This is not going to be me talking about all of these problems and then running out of time. And then we'll talk about it next year. So it is completely different. I'm coming to the conclusion, actually there is no problem. No, not quite. Okay, you are doing fine. We all know we're doing this on hard mode, right? And like one of the things we have to do is sort of notice where we are and then apply ourselves to using our superpowers, right? Which is, I will just list your superpowers in case you didn't know it. You're all actually kind of lovely. I'm sure you've been in other ecosystems where you've gone, okay, like we disagree, but like we're not like, right? You're all lovely, apart from Reba. No, you're lovely too, Reba. And also, you're all great at building tools, right? You all understand the decentralizing challenge. And again, I don't want to reiterate, this isn't really a problem of decentralization. This is just an interesting challenge of when your abstraction is over individuals rather than the fixed perimeters that capital and intellectual property and social norms create around and regulation create around particular individuals. Like, okay, so more practically, here are some next steps that I'm sort of doing. Well, yeah, obviously AI will fix this. I mean, AI is going to fix us one way or the other, right? We'll have some talks later on from people who are applying agents over our huge mass of data. I think the one thing I sort of want to emphasize, and if you're interested in talking to me, actually, me and David, sorry to rope you in, but we've started having these conversations, and also Netty, one of the ecosystem partners, and also a bunch of people in the wider PL network, is we're trying to pull together the resources that AIs can use. So in Juan's term, like we are writing for AIs so you can, as individuals, have agents. So your agents are reaching out and getting this data rather than you are having to search it out or customize it for your very individual needs. So I know that's kind of vague, but come and talk to me. We've got some plans. Less vaguely, I know I keep going, people in the foundation know I keep talking about this, but one of the really key resources that I think we can all use is the PL network directory, because the PL network directory actually abstracts over individuals and then bumps you up to the team level. And it's, you know, it's a problem with updating it and keeping it updated and stuff like that. But if you want to sort of start making that mapping, the network directory is great. And secret bonus thing to show I've been doing some work, rather than just sticking treasure hunts into very important confidential documents. This is on the Python index. This is PLN search. This is a command line interface to the PL network directory. So you can do searches, you can run it into your own agent tools, you can search for names, you can search for teams. It'll show you the information you are, and even spit it out in JSON if you want to do it in some ways. Not GDPR compliant. There's a nice picture of the diagram, so I had more time to show the QR code. Very quickly, one of the ways you make context in a palatable form is creating stories, right? And that's one of the ways we talk to each other as individuals. I'll highlight that FOC is a really compelling story, not just in a sort of marketing way, but it's a creation of a wrapper around this whole ecosystem. And so for the important point of this is not only for us to talk to ourselves at 3 o'clock in the morning while we're drunk, but also to be able to talk to other people, right? And I found it a lot easier to talk about Filecoin and how Filecoin is organized by referring to the on-chain cloud, like because people like Tim and Jenny and folks and Josh and everyone involved in that have put so much work into making that a clear interface. It's actually powerful as a social interface too. And this is really a story of cleaner interfaces, right? The next step of all of this is we need to develop a little bit more flesh around, if not the institutions, then a higher abstraction level, which lets me segue nicely over to my manager, Marta, just in case you wanted to know. Well, actually, it's more complicated than that. But anyway, one of the things we were talking about is like, okay, given that this is this sort of challenge, what's a good abstraction interface over the foundation? The number one question after give me an org chart is like, what is the foundation doing? What are you trying to achieve? What's your place in the ecosystem? And so I grabbed Marta and said, Marta, can you give a few minutes to talk about that? So thank you very much, and blend your applause in to applaud Marta.
We have a question.
Can I have one comment?
No.
Should I leave the room? I don't know if it's universal in Poland. When you were really naughty at school, you had to stand in a corner facing the wall for like 5 or 10 minutes. I'm all old, you know. Give you drugs?
Give you more kale.
Make you leave.
No, so the only comment I really had was around the PLN directory, and my thought there is, it theoretically is very useful, but it's very unuseful, and I don't even think it's because of how like outdated it is or whatever. It's just too big. It's just like I sometimes want to find things there, and I can't because there's too many things. So I think that there is something which you were hinting at, which there can be an information overload. We don't need to know everything, even though we think that we need to know everything.
So one of the things, and I talked a bit, I haven't actually talked to Polaris yet because they're obviously a little busy. But this is actually one of the things that I talked a little with Juan about is again, like the challenge we have is we have to think up an abstraction level that is not at the individual level because that's overwhelming, but a little bit higher than that. And I think, to be honest, this is sort of where the incentive to build pods is, right? So if you think of pods rather than sort of like a new institution or so, I mean, I'm not the pod guy, right? get cheeky. But one of the ways I'm thinking about this as an opportunity is to have some organizing layer so that, again, it's that thing of like, who should I talk to, right? And right now, you absolutely have to hit your arrow perfectly, right? You have to get exactly the right person, or you have to do multiple hops. So I'm not sure pods is the right thing, but this middle abstraction lever is the thing that I'm sort of clumbering to.
I think that the real question that most of us have when they say, you know, who works at Straccia or something like, what is Straccia up to? At least my real worry or thing that I'm seeking most of the time is who is working on the same thing as I want to start working on, so that I'm not duplicating the effort.
Duplicating effort.
I mean, we have the talk that Magic is doing about car files and indexing, which is like exactly over.
I also had that.
Yeah.
Oh, Magic's doing that as well?
Yeah.
It's like, I was a little bit, oh my God.
So there is, at least once or twice a quarter, there is something like that happens. And I think that's a lot of wasted effort. And what Juan was saying the first day, it's like, that stops us from innovating because the people are engaged in the wrong things, or they could be engaged separately.
You're either hesitant to tread on people's toes, or you go ahead and do a thing because you have a bias for action, and you end up treading on someone's toes, right? And yeah, that is but anyway, I shouldn't, but let's talk more.
All right. Okay, excellent. So, So one of the things that I wanted to talk through is basically one of the questions that you're asking, I think very rightly, MPG, is like, what is everyone doing? Which I think is a really important question. And I think when it comes to Filecoin Foundation, we really want to make sure that folks in the ecosystem have a really good sense of what Filecoin Foundation is doing and focusing on in the next year. So I wanted this group to take a look at our fiscal year 2026 strategic priorities and OKRs in their current form. And there's actually a place in the notes document where you can add any feedback that you have about these OKRs and strategic priorities. So for Filecoin Foundation, it's a really interesting question as to whether we only include in our strategic priorities things that Filecoin Foundation has sort of sole control over. And we sort of realized that the reality of the situation is that really, when it comes to Filecoin Foundation, our goal is to steward the Filecoin ecosystem. And so someone has to have in their, objectives and key results, things that are sort of bigger picture. So I just want to acknowledge that these objectives and key results and strategic priorities are very big picture and about the Filecoin ecosystem. But these are really ways that we as Filecoin Foundation, things that we want to focus on to make sure that we're stewarding the ecosystem in a way that's going to make a lot of progress in this next year. So the first thing that we want to do strategically is to really sort of drive client success, and that includes identifying pain points, tackling pain points, making sure clients are having positive experiences. And the way that we want to do that is, one is through the client success working group, stewarding that, making sure we have the right people in the right room talking about the right things. That's a lot of what Filecoin Foundation does as the steward of the ecosystem. And really making sure that we're getting people together for high impact convenings like this one, like the PMF Colo in Berlin, like the Colo in Denver, to get people in the room talking about things that matter for moving client success forward. The second is that we want to be focusing on key verticals. So you all have seen the slide a million times with the different key verticals, and for us, one of the key strategies is making sure that those verticals are critical to what we're doing in the next year. We also, of course, are focusing on making sure that it is seamless to put data onto the Filecoin network, right? And our big picture takeaway from this entire, like if there's one line on what is Filecoin Foundation focusing on for 2026, it is what you see at the top, which is make Filecoin work seamlessly and find product market fit. That is like the takeaway, like that is what Filecoin Foundation is focused on. We also want to be supporting storage providers in making sure that they are profitable. And the big focus for us in 2026 is paid deals. So that's something that is a little bit of a pivot from last year, is the focus on paid deals as opposed to other things. That is like one of our key focuses as Filecoin Foundation. We also are increasingly coordinating ecosystem-wide communications. And we want to do that to make sure, that doesn't mean we are the only people sending ecosystem-wide communications, but when we have key moments, so for example, the Filecoin on-chain cloud launch next week, Filecoin birthday, we see Filecoin Foundation's role in those communications is really coordinating the ecosystem to make sure we have a really big splash as an ecosystem in those communications. Our emphasis is on quality and usability and stability and security. We don't want to facilitate an ecosystem where we have constant launches of things that aren't maintained. Instead, we want to be focusing on the quality, the usability, and the stability, as well as the security. And then finally, we want to really be showcasing Filecoin's strength through high-profile and high-quality integrations, partnerships, and that includes, of course, a big focus on AI. So how does that play out in our ecosystem-facing objectives? We have a number of key results that you can see here. So when it comes to the first, so speaking of David, which since you've been a constant shout out in this in today's presentation. So our first 4 key results are the 4 key results that you've seen for the key ecosystem metrics. So you all probably have seen these 4 key ecosystem metrics that are tracked. Our first 4 key results are those metrics. We want to be completely aligned with the rest of the ecosystem. We think the work is really important to make sure that those key metrics are front and center. Obviously, we are not the only people in the ecosystem who are affecting that, but we think it's really important that we have our eye on that ball. And then we also have sort of KRs that result to identifying critical pain points and then actually solving those pain points, as well as increasing on-chain activity. And that, again, is also a little bit of a pivot from previous years. The focus on-chain activity will really allow us to really track, on-chain paid deals in a way that we will make sure that value is accruing to the Filecoin network. And then we really want to focus on our key mandate, which is stewarding the Filecoin ecosystem. So we want to be convening stakeholders in these cross-ecosystem working groups and calls, making sure those are very effective. Again, getting the right people in the right room, talking about the right things. We see that as a critical mandate of Filecoin Foundation. We would like to make sure that there is a network roadmap, that everyone knows sort of where the network as a whole is going, and we want to be the stewards of that roadmap. We want to organize and support high-impact events that really bring together ecosystem participants, so things like FDS, things like the colos. We also want to be facilitating major high-profile partnerships and collaborations, and also some very high-impact amplification moments. Again, a great example is this coming Tuesday, the Filecoin on-chain cloud launch. We really want to make sure we're getting a lot of media hits, a lot of external views on the important work that the Filecoin ecosystem is doing. And then finally, we want to make sure that all FIPs have a documented pathway to resolution. So that's our governance work with our new head of governance, Michael. All right, so that is sort of the current draft. We welcome any feedback that you have, again, in the document. And of course, any questions. There are many Filecoin Foundation people here. We all have talked endlessly about these strategic priorities and OKRs, so I think pretty much anyone from FF can answer any questions that you have about this. MPG.
Sorry, if you go to the first slide then. I was counting this welcome slide. I feel like the first 2 points are incredibly opinionated already. So like, especially the second one, identify and focus on key verticals, e.g., and basically we have all the things that we have identified so far as potential verticals. So it's like, it's not really like we are, or you're looking to identify, you're maybe looking to just decide what to focus on or something like that. And there is nothing in there that talks about community governance, coordination, and so on, which I think I always thought that like with the governance team, the Phil Plus and everything else, like that's something that FF is supposed to. So I guess this is more of a question, like, isn't that part of what should be a strategic priority of like happy, healthy ecosystem? Yeah.
Yeah, two great questions. So these are the org-wide strategic priorities for Filecoin Foundation. Each team within Filecoin Foundation also has objectives and key results. And so the governance team very much has KRs as well. And definitely, I think there are a bunch of things that we could add to this list there's tons of other things that Filecoin Foundation does. We wanted to sort of narrow it down to a sort of key set of things, but I think you're definitely right. That is one of the governance and Phil Plus and related activities are one of the important things that Filecoin Foundation does. We saw this as more identifying a set of strategic priorities rather than listing out every single thing that Filecoin Foundation does. But it's great feedback, and you should put it in the doc.
Sure. So just to explain where because you said a very interesting thing. So the governance team has its own OKRs and so on. So if I am leading the governance team, it would be hard for me to tie what we do in the governance team into those strategic objectives, I think. I mean, maybe Michael is much better at it than I am, simply. But it's just kind of from perspective of a team, I would guess it's how do I identify with those things? How do I know that I'm moving a needle org-wide is what I'm aiming at.
Well, Michael seems to have a response to that, which is great.
I mean, I do think it's in there without naming any of the programs explicitly. I think it falls under this bullet of coordinate ecosystem-wide communications, align internal and external stakeholders on priorities, decisions, and progress for the network. So, yes, I agree. We're not calling out PhilPlus by name specifically, but I think that's the general objective direction of what we want to accomplish.
Ian has a note as well.
I also, for me at least, governance isn't a goal in itself. We want to use a good governance process to help the network emphasize quality, usability, stability, and security. We want to use a good governance process to help identify and focus on key verticals, right? So governance is a tool rather than a goal for us. And these are more around what are we trying to use the various tools in our ecosystem toolbox to accomplish?
Yeah, that MPG, the way I think about it is events are also a tool to bring people together, to coordinate across the ecosystem. So similarly, it's a thing that we're doing, but it's not necessarily just the key objective. Although sometimes we do have an objective to hold a specific event. It's just a tool that we can use to do some of these broader things.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the real big picture thing that everyone at Filecoin Foundation is rowing towards is the top line objective, which is make Filecoin work seamlessly and find product market fit. That is the goal, and every single person at Filecoin Foundation is rowing together in that direction. Great. All right. Well, thank you all so much. This is really great, and especially a huge thank you to Danny for all of your excellent jokes and also the treasure hunts. Thank you for the treasure hunt. So thank you all.